Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about my process for writing essays and how to just get good grades on essays. So we'll get right into it. So when it comes to essays, there really are three main parts to really talk about. So first is planning. And this is going to eat up quite a bit of time, but once you kind of get used to it, it really doesn't have to. But there's just a lot of steps to it that, can take up some time, but it's really not that bad. So what I like to do is I like to actually write out a plan in a notebook and have it kind of just in front of me, think it through, all of that. And the first thing that I really like to write out are just the little details. I write out the prompt, I write how many words it has to be, or page count, or whatever kind of structure it has to be. Any of those little details that you get when you're given the assignment. I had one professor, we had research papers, and we had to have a certain number of sources, and I just like to write all of those out right at the top. Then from there, usually I have a word count, but if you don't, you can kind of set it up with that as well, however it kind of fits. But I know that a body paragraph is going to be about 200 words. So knowing that a body paragraph is going to be about 200 words, I then can say, okay, this is a 1,000-word essay. And I know I can do about 100 words for an intro, 100 words for a conclusion, so just take off 200 words off the bat. Then I've got 800 words left, and if I'm thinking my body paragraphs are going to be about 200 words each, then I need 4 body paragraphs for an 800 word leftover. So once I have that kind of math figured out, and it's not going to be exact, but if you kind of figure it out like that, it makes it a lot easier to kind of go forward. And that way, if you can go under 200 words in one paragraph, but over in another, your introductory and conclusion, whatever paragraphs aren't necessarily going to be exactly 100 words, they might be more. So you'll kind of find some wiggle room within it, but it gives you a good structure to move forward with. And after you figure out how many body paragraphs you're going to need, you can start figuring out what ideas are going to fit with those. So depending on the paper, you may already kind of have an idea for a thesis going in, but if you don't, you can just write down some ideas for the body paragraphs, and you can do more than paragraphs you have. You can, even if you're doing 4 body paragraphs, you can write 6, 8, 10 ideas, and then find the common denominator between the 4 or however many you choose. And that can help you really kind of create a thesis off okay, here's what I want to talk about in my essay. What do these have in common? Because sometimes that'll trick you into realizing connected analysis you're doing. So from there, you've kind of got a little bit more now you can get into the actual essay itself, the specifics. So once you figure out which ideas that you want to talk about in your different paragraphs, what I like to do usually for especially an analytic paper that I have to do, or being an English major, a lot of times I've got to use quotes. So what I like to do is I actually will go through and find quotes, and I write all of them down with everything. And I just think of anything that really connects to any of those ideas that I've decided to use in my essay. Once I've done all of that, I go back and I number my ideas for which paragraphs they're going to be. I take those numbers and I number all of the quotes to correlate with which paragraph they fit into. So, not all the quotes are going to fit in any random paragraph. They'll connect to the idea that you're talking about. So I just number them accordingly. And then I go back and I reorganize the numbers to show what order I want them to go in my essay, because a lot of times you'll find that like different ideas can lead into each other really well, and it makes sense to order them in a specific way. So I just like to do that just so my brain kind of wraps around it. And so then once I've got all my quotes together, you can start to actually brainstorm analysis for what connects the quote to the idea. You don't necessarily have to write anything down, just kind of be thinking about it when you're kind of going through this process. And that's kind of where my planning tends to end. Once I've like figured out where my paragraphs are going, what's going in them, I can start to really write. So that is the second step, is writing your essay. And it can really sound scary, but once you've got the planning done, it's really about just filling things in, and it can actually go a lot quicker than you think. So what I try to remember is a few things. First is something that I learned in AP English my senior year of high school, which is the how and why loop, which is basically just you have a quote, how does it relate to your thesis, and why is it important? And by doing that, you can literally write essays like that. As long as you can figure out that information in your head, it's so easy to just write that process over and over and over for all your quotes. Even if you have 1 quote per paragraph, if you have 12 quotes per paragraph, don't put 12 quotes per paragraph. That's too many. Like, it should be more your writing in words than other people's. But no matter how many quotes you have, if you just follow that loop again and again, it just makes it like, I hate to say checklist because that sounds super impersonal, but like you're just doing those same things again and again, and you don't have to worry about like the pressure of how am I going to write this, what am I going to do, all this stuff, because you know how you're going to do it. It's just fitting it into that specific essay. So that's been very helpful for me, especially because sometimes you're going to have essays that you could not care less about the subject, but having a structure and a way to just like move through it helps so much. So the next thing is I've learned that sometimes I can just write the intro and go straight into it from there, but a lot of the times it can be really helpful to start on the body paragraphs, because the intro and the conclusion are what kind of pull all of it together, and unless you already know what you want to talk about in those paragraphs, it's going to be really hard to figure out how to start and end it. So if you can write all your body paragraphs and then go back, the intro and conclusion are very, very easy to just pull together based on what you already have written. And then another thing that I kind of like to focus on is that the intro and conclusion should be in verses, at least structurally. So with your introductory paragraph, you're going to want to be talking, you'll have a sentence kind of leading into your idea, and if you're doing literature analysis, sometimes you want to, introduce the work you're talking about or the 2 works you're comparing, and you want to have the title, the author, and sometimes the date of publication, that kind of stuff, but you're kind of introducing into the idea, however, what kind of essay you're writing. And then you'll say some stuff about it, you'll kind of then lead into your idea. The ice cream truck is here. Okay, you'll lead into your idea and you're gonna end on your thesis, and that's gonna pull it all together. With the conclusion, you can kind of start with your thesis. You don't necessarily like restate it, but that idea's starting off your conclusion, and then you're kind of taking ideas like you did with the introduction to trickle out of, to pull all of that thesis idea together just on the way out instead of on the way in, because you've already introduced the idea. You don't need to reintroduce why it works or whatever that you do in the introduction. Now you're saying goodbye. So you're kind of just flipping them as far as form goes. And that pretty much covers the actual writing process, and it can take a while and whatever, but I try not to put too much pressure on myself especially in a first draft, because I know I'm going to be writing more, and if I take that pressure off, I can just write, and I don't have to worry about, oh, does it sound perfect? Because I know I'll handle that later. Let me get my ideas down. And another great tip is I actually learned, sometimes you'll get stuck on a word, you don't know what word you want to use, or you can't remember the word, or whatever. Don't stop your writing process. Keep writing, and what I do is I use the word elephant in all caps to break up wherever I know that I need a word, or I miss something or something like that. Sometimes if I know I just want a sentence, I'll just say elephant, elephant, elephant. Just to know I've got to add something there. I don't know what, I don't know how. I need to go back to it in another draft. You have to be careful because I definitely turned in assignments with elephants still in. I once did a speech and the word elephant was in my PowerPoint and I had to explain to my entire class what that meant. But it's so helpful. It doesn't break up your train of thought and you can just keep moving and come back to it later and handle it later. And I found a lot of the times when I go back, I figure out a word immediately. I figure out how I need to fix it immediately because my brain has had time to subconsciously settle and figure something out even while I continued working. So that covers the writing aspect. And now the last part of all of this is rewriting. And you know, this again, it doesn't take very long, especially once you kind of like, once you've written, rewriting really doesn't take that long. It's just kind of figuring out the nitty-gritty stuff and what needs to be fixed up. But there are a few important things to really talk about with the rewriting process that have helped me so much. So the first thing that I will say is, you know, I hate to share this tip because it's so not fun, but it is by far one of the best tips I've ever seen. It works so well. And that is, don't edit, rewrite. I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me for this one, but it is phenomenal. It works so well. So when you're writing an essay or whatever and you need to do your next draft, what I do is I split screen. One half of my screen is the first draft or whatever previous draft I was on. Sometimes I'm writing 4 or 5 drafts of an essay or whatever. One half is the previous draft, whatever it was. The other side is a brand new page and I rewrite every single word. I've had 2,500 word essays that I've done this with. Here's the thing. When you're rewriting every single word, you're thinking about every single word. You have to stop and, you know, there's so many things that I've caught that I never would have if I didn't have to rewrite the word. Not even just spelling errors, but words that just didn't quite fit. I'm like, I can write that better. And it really, really helps to like, I find that I can get drafts out quickly just by rewriting it because I don't have to do as many because I catch so much more. And it really does work so well. And the other thing, you know, is again that whole elephant thing, just catch, you know, those kinds of things, fix those up. But other than that, my main, you know, advice would just be don't edit, rewrite. I know it sounds tedious and annoying, but it really, really does work so well. And I know in this video, I only really talked about, you know, just, you know, a little bit about essays, and I can definitely go into more detail about different types of essays. I could talk about research papers. I could definitely talk about English, literature, and analytic, all that kind of stuff. I could talk for days on those. I could talk about writing history papers, speeches, all those kinds of things just from what I've learned from doing them myself. So let me know in the comment section if you're interested in seeing like a breakdown of more specific types of essays and how I've found luck writing different kinds. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you aren't already. I will see you in the next one. Bye!